You guys, look at that. We got a butterfly floating past in Southern California near Huntington Beach. We've got a really beautiful park here with some off-road terrain. The perfect spot to try the RipCurrent S. The S stands for the speed version. This thing has fat tires that are going to eat up soft terrain, and it did rain recently. So, you know, you lower the air pressure a little bit, and you can even go through some of the mud, some sand, some snow. It's interesting to see a bike like this that it could be off-road, but that it also has some pretty nice fenders, these plastic fenders. This one is going to be bouncing a little bit more than it would be. There's actually an adapter that connects it to the rack in the future. So keep that in mind. There's going to be a little bit of extra noise later during the ride test, but the front fender feels very good, and plastic can get bumped and it sort of springs back into place. It's lighter than aluminum. Aluminum tends to be a little bit more rigid, and it's not going to rust like steel if you get a scratch in it. So I appreciate that Tora, the founder of this company, Juiced Bikes, I think he speaks Mandarin and he travels back and forth to Asia and the United States and really is able to dial this in and offer a bunch of custom stuff, including this 1050 lumen headlight here. I mean, this thing is intense and there's no branding or anything. It's just like a custom part that they had made. I really appreciate that. But the fenders are also kind of custom. The rack, this thing has a really big platform on top because this is such a wide bike with the fat tires. But it also has a standard gauge tube right here for hanging panniers, along with a little opening for if you wanted to do bungee cords, or a lot of panniers have a little locking mechanism on them too. So it's very functional. It's not just like, yeah, we had a rack. It's extra wide so it can fit the hub spacing down there, which is 170 in the rear and 135 up front. There's a standard 9mm quick release skewer up front, and then this Mozo air spring suspension fork with compression and lockout right there. So those are really your adjustments, other than sagging this thing, lowering the tire pressure if you wanted to. I'm a relatively lightweight rider, 135 pounds, so this bike is it's kind of overkill for me in terms of power, and that suspension fork lowering the PSI, even the tire pressure. Even if I was on the road, I could still get pretty efficient rolling momentum with a bit lower, and then I would get some comfort. Sometimes I recommend, swapping out the rigid seat post for like a suspension post to improve comfort even more. You could do that here. This is 27.2, very standard width on that. Celly Royale gel looking saddle. And, it comes down, you can see where the rack is long, so you have plenty of space to mount a bag back here, but when you bring the seat down, it might start to collide a little bit with the front of the rack, or if you have a bag there. So kind of keep that in mind. The bike does come in 3 different sizes, 16.5, 18, and 20. We're on the 18 here, so they call it large, and then the 20 is like extra large. This feels fine to me. I've measured the standover height, the reach, the length, the width, all those important metrics, because you might want to put this in your garage and you're wondering if you have enough space, because it is so long, and it's pretty heavy too. It's about 70 pounds on this thing. I had to estimate the weight because we've got the really high capacity battery here, 48 volt, 21 amps, and the stock is 48 volt, 13 amp hours, but it comes in the same casing. So this is another custom part here that Tora and the company have developed, so they can use it interchangeably across the different models, and it just fits really nice. They do have bottle cage bosses here. It might be a little tricky. You might have to get one of those side entry bottle cages, because sliding in and out that way could be a little tight, but you can always put like a folding lock or a mini pump. I just appreciate that they have them, even if you don't use them. Still nice to have there. The battery is sunk into the frame a little bit, and the down tube is extra wide and just really sturdy. The battery hasn't been rattling around a lot. It's a nice pack. You can charge it on or off. Here's the charging port there on the left. There is an on-off switch, so you have to activate the battery first before the display. Those 2 steps, sometimes you forget and you're like, why isn't it working? And it's like, okay, well, at least you can reach down and get to that. And then the charging port is up high, so if you're moving these crank arms or walking the bike around, they're not gonna get bent or snagged. I appreciate that. Same thing with the kickstand back here. It's far out of the way, adjustable length. It's out of the way of the rotor too. These are 180mm hydraulic disc brakes, front and rear. That's good. You want that extra large rotor to dissipate heat and also to give you a mechanical advantage over these enormous tires. These are the Kenda Crusade Sport. They are 26 by 4.0. You might be able to get, some 4.9s, or, I can't say for sure, and you wouldn't want to rub on the fenders, but you don't have to have the fenders on this thing. I feel like you have a lot of options. 12 gauge spokes in the rear, black. They match that nice fat bike specific Bafang hub motor. and then up front 13 gauge. So pretty thick, extra thick for extra support and strength. And then again, being a fat bike specific motor, it's a little bit wider, and I think that gives you a better bracing angle and just more strength for the wider rims and then those bigger tires. Okay, so, you know, kind of definitely appreciating what they've done here, and the motor's giving you a lot of power. It's 750 watt nominal up to like 1035 watt peak, up to 80 newton meters of torque, and that's great. You know, I have seen some mid-drive electric fat bikes out there, and they're great too, probably more efficient than this, but then you have all those awesome battery upgrades, including a 52 volt battery, so even higher voltage. The specs say about 20 amps running through the controller, and it's a pure sine wave, so it's smooth. The power ramps up really smoothly on this bike, and you do have a trigger throttle. So sometimes on a fat bike, you're like actually in sand, and you're kicking the bike, like trying to get going and pedaling, and that's a lot to do. Having a throttle can be really nice, especially for an off-road application. So this is by default a class 3 electric bike. It can go up to about 28 miles per hour pedal assist and 20 miles throttle mode. But they sell in different geographies like Canada and sometimes New Zealand and Europe and stuff. So in those geographies, there's like kind of a speed limiter, and you can always remove the throttle. There's a lot that you can do with this, and part of the reason it's so open and flexible is because the wires have these awesome connectors, threaded. They've got the little washer, so they're pretty tough. They're not going to pull apart, and they're sealed better. But then when they come down to the frame, a lot of times the nicer bikes are having those internally routed. This one has them like semi-internally routed, so you can see how they're hidden, but there's this rubber strip that actually pulls off so you can get to them and do some maintenance a little bit easier. And I just feel like it keeps them clean and protected. They're a little bit exposed at the bottom bracket, but that's not uncommon. And then if you look at this chainring, this is 52 teeth, so it's a little bit bigger, but it's got this alloy bash guard / guide, so the chain should not bounce off. Even if you're in rough stuff and you get mud on this, you're not going to get chain suck as much, and it's going to protect that bottom bracket area, those wires. So this is like burly, pretty nice. 170 millimeter pro wheel crank arms, the decent kind of BMX style aluminum alloy well goes with fixed pins. Looks like an e-bike specific chain that might be rust resistant. I didn't see a slap guard, but with that larger chain ring, maybe that's not as much of an issue. The drivetrain is one of the areas that are a little bit more cheap and basic. And you know, the price on this thing's pretty amazing at $16.99 to start. So I understand they got to make some compromises somewhere. Shimano Altus, 9 speeds, so that's plenty of range. And maybe using Altus, it's a little heavier, and maybe using more steel, and just it's basic. It's like one step up from tourney, but maybe that's a little bit tougher, like those parts. 11 to 32 teeth, so it's not a huge range, but again, you have a throttle, and you have pretty responsive pedal assist. When we look, this black plate right here, that's actually a torque sensor, and then they have Hall sensing cadence sensors inside the hub there. So it's one of the more dynamic and fluid responding e-bikes in that way. That isn't like from a top manufacturing, you know, like a Bosch motor that's measuring rear wheel speed and pedal cadence and all that fancy. This is actually a pretty good solution for a hub motor, one of the better ones in my opinion. So you get the super value and then you know, pretty responsive performance. I feel like that's a win. And you'll notice that the trigger throttle is here on the left because the trigger shifters are on the right, and we do have like a multi-shift down. It's, you know, it's kind of like average in terms of the actual component, but it's replaceable, and frankly, this gets the job done. It does more than enough. You know, yeah, so I appreciate that. The derailleur seems like it's tucked in a little bit more. The motor cable also, in this example, really nicely arranged, and you've got the quick disconnect if you need to service the rear wheel or maybe replace the tube or something like that. Just be careful, because if the bike tips to the right, you don't want to bend this derailleur. It's a heavy bike, right? And you also don't want to snag or bend that motor power cable, because then your motor's not going to work. So those are some of the, you know, I say this all the time. The pedal would probably stop the frame. At least there's no battery weight up here. A lot of it is relatively low and forward on the bike. Definitely appreciate that. There's no quick release in the rear. I think it's like the 12 millimeter, you know, threaded axle with some nuts. And if we come over here to the left side, you can actually see a little steel torque arm right here. So they are trying to help spread some of that power out into the frame, because it's an aluminum alloy frame. On the other side, you've got that torque sensor, and maybe it helps to act as it's like a torque arm in a way, because there's just so much more thickness that the axle is going through that it can push against. So yeah, I feel like they're taking into account the extra power that's going through the system. And while we're back here, I'll call out this like Star Union light. It's pretty basic. It's like 3 LEDs, and it's independent. It runs on 2 AAA batteries. You're gonna have to remember to turn that off and on like whenever you go riding. And when you press it a second time, it blinks, which is nice, keeps you visible, but you have to hold it for a few seconds to completely turn it off. Keep that in mind. Love that they have it, and it keeps the bike a little bit more reliable if you're trying to run cables and wires all the way across this, and you're going in snow, mud, sand, whatever. That's why a lot of these like online direct-to-consumer bikes don't have integrated rear lights, is because it's a point of failure. But the headlight is nice, and it's a lot closer. The wire's shorter and stuff. It's aimable. I might as well turn those on. So here we go, 48 volts. Press the button. You get the green glow. I have estimated the weight on this back at the website. I know for sure if it's around 7 pounds. The motor, same thing. I estimated around 9 pounds because I couldn't weigh this one specifically, but based on some of the other reviews that I've done. And we come up here to the display panel. There's actually a power button on the back, so you hold that. It's not just a press. There we go. Now it comes to life. This is faintly backlit if you hold the plus arrow. There we go. So it turns on and it says headlight. So this becomes backlit. And then we've got our headlight. Super bright. Yeah, it really does a good job and actually gives you some visibility in addition to the being seen component. I like the silver frame here, the brushed aluminum, because it gives you a visual footprint from the side, and I'm someone who actually rides my bike around town. It's not just like recreation for me, so I don't have a lot of space. If I was gonna get just one bike, I tend to get the visible bikes, but they also have matte black and then gloss red. So here's a matte black example. This is the CrossCurrent S, high speed, same price, $16.99, different fork. This is like a coil fork that's not air, a little bit heavier, a little bit more basic, still has lockout and everything, and then you can see the wires on this one are more exposed. It's just a good example of the black, and I like that the graphics and stuff are just subtle, right? They blend in. It's almost like glossy black decals on the matte black. Very similar specs. I've reviewed that separately, but Juiced is constantly, upgrading and refining their product offerings, so little things can change. They have great videos on their website and everything here. I'm actually with Rich from the company. What's your role there?
I'm involved with sales and some of the marketing aspects of the company.
Yeah, thank you for meeting me today.
Absolutely, glad you could make it.
Do a great job on these bikes, and as I was saying, there's all these videos back at, what's your website?
Yep. Juiced Bikes, www.juicedbikes.com.
Okay, and you sell predominantly through the website. Do any shops still carry you? Or
no, we sell predominantly through our website, all direct to customer.
Okay, he's saying predominantly because they used to sell at like the Electric Bicycle Center here in Southern California. They had these cool cargo bikes and stuff. But they've been steadily going more towards, it seems like the commuter or like the fun off-road bikes. Does that seem right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've gone more to with the beach cruisers, and then also the commuter bikes with both of these bikes, both commuter and fun.
Yeah, you got a lot of bang for your buck is kind of what I keep coming back to, and the different battery options. If you, look, the butterfly here. Let's go check out the butterfly. Oh, come on back. Well, oh. Wow. There it goes, I guess. Anyway, I guess for me it's interesting to think about this whole 52 volt option. It's giving you extra power and extra range. And then you also get like a faster charger. It's like the Satiator one from Grin.
From Grin, and that's gonna increase your charging power, your speed for charging. And then in addition, the GPS.
Tell me about that. What does that mean?
Yeah, that you can track your rides with that, but also in security wise, if somebody steals your bike, which does happen, these are expensive bikes, a lot goes into them from the consumer aspect, that you can tell the police right where the address is that your bike is. Okay. So you have that security feature.
So this is like a smartphone app?
Yes, yeah, it attaches to your smartphone, and first year is free, and then every year after, I think it's $5 a month.
Not bad.
No.
Not bad, okay. Well, cool. I'm gonna jump back into the display panel real quick and finish walking you guys through that, but it's nice to hear about those different options. And actually, I should just call out the charger. The stock charger is pretty basic. It's like 1.7, 1.8 pounds, 2 amp output, just got the little plug, it's just standard. That's a little bit different than the one you get on the 52 volt. And actually, I think the plug might be different because this plug's a little bit larger. I've seen the silver one, so I'm sorry guys, that might be a little bit inaccurate, but the charger's roughly what you saw back there. And I want to call out, these are square tapered spindles, so there are some parts here again that are a little bit more basic, but it looks like the headset, 1.1/8 straight, sealed bearings, a little bit like tighter, and you've got the 7-degree rise on the stem, longer handlebars. All those specs are at the website, but I'm calling out some of those features, because if you wanted to upgrade your suspension or something at some point, it's important to know that how that's set up. And I do feel like this is a little bit more water resistant and durable. So at the top left, we have voltage, 52.12 volts, 9 ticks on that battery infographic. Definitely appreciate higher resolution. There's the light icon. I'm gonna go ahead and press the plus button again to turn it off. Assist level, so it started in 1, but you can go down to eco. It's even more efficient. 1, 2, 3, or sport, and that's how you get the higher top speeds and a little bit more power. Speed in miles per hour right now, and then we've got watt readout and then miles, so like odometer. I think if we hold the minus button here for a couple seconds, we get the walk mode, and that could be handy if you get a flat tire or maybe you get bogged down in a swamp or sand. Sometimes you just can't get back on the bike, or you don't want to, and you're just like, I'm gonna push this thing. But 70 pounds, having walk mode is pretty nice. And then if you hold the power and the plus button, you get an advanced readout. So this has even more information, like temperature and then watt hours. We got the voltage, watts, amps. So just a lot more information. I'm gonna hold those two again. And then if you hold plus and minus, you get more menus. Okay, so this is like the settings area. So you can change your units, speed limit, backlighting, wheel size, power off delay, so the thing will turn itself off, torque, and then low volts. So I like this display because of how compact and reachable it is. You know, even with the throttle right there, it's easy to read. Being monochrome, it's not going to take a lot of power. There are no USB ports, no charging ports. Some of their other batteries have a port, but Juiced Bikes has disabled that because they were worried about phantom power draw. To take good care of your battery pack, you want to store it in a cool, dry location. Don't drop it. Extreme heat and extreme cold kind of degrade it, and I've heard that when you go below 20%, the chemistry in the cells changes a little bit, so I tend to charge mine, you know, before that. Yeah, that's an expensive part of the bike, but it's nice to know that Juiced Bikes is really standardizing with that design, and so you could always get another pack, and it's not locked, it's not software locked like some of the proprietary stuff, so you could have it repacked by a company like High C Batteries in Denver. They do that kind of thing. So I think that's about it. It might be a good chance to get on. The ergonomic grips, 4-finger hydraulic levers with, I think, motor inhibitors, which is nice, just given that even though it's sensitive, sometimes you're accidentally pedaling or you're using the throttle when you're trying to stop. So having an override, like, that's a great safety feature. I'm glad they paid attention to that. Rich, I was hoping maybe you can get on this thing and just ride around for a second with the throttle. How much do you weigh?
About 260.
260, okay, yeah, you're a bigger guy, and you know, I wanted to show that this bike can handle it.
Just throttle alone?
Yeah, just, you know, throttle it and stay close because it's a wide angle lens.
Yeah, here we go.
There we go. So it looks like he took a pedal stroke or two getting up the hill. Starts out smoothly. It is a geared motor, so there's a little bit of you kind of hear that, but it keeps it compact and a little bit lighter weight than if it was gearless, and you don't get the cogging and stuff. So I feel like it's the right answer for this application. For a bigger rider, I mean, you can see why it's nice to have the higher voltage battery and the higher power motor. There we go. There we go. Very nice. Thank you. I really appreciate the third-person perspective. I'm going to hop on this thing now and do some just starts and stops and try to explain what I'm hearing, and then we'll put the camera on and do some more fun rides. I'm going to do this in the highest level of assist because I do feel like it doesn't overwhelm you. You know, if you're not pushing, the cadence sensor doesn't just switch the motor to full blast, and I like that. It's a little bit more nuanced. And again, keep in mind that this bike, it doesn't have that extra fender support in the rear, so a lot of the noise you're hearing is that bouncing around. The bigger tires give you some comfort when they're at lower PSI, but also that stability, so you can ride without feeling like the bike's gonna tip over, even at lower speeds. I definitely appreciate that. Okay guys, I just turned on the display panel, and it does always start in that first level of assist, one level up from Eco. That seems to be pretty good. You know, I'm looking down here at the drivetrain, and you can see how the guide is touching some of those cables right there. So be careful, because over time that could wear through and expose either the shifter cable or even fray the power cable a little bit. So maybe a zip tie right here, that would bring it in. Again, this is an e-bike specific chain, should do pretty well. 52 tooth chain ring, and then 11 to 32 teeth in the rear, 9 speed, so you have a lot to work with. I'm going to go ahead and lower the air pressure as well in a minute here, but first let's do some on pavement level 3 pedal assist just to see how responsive it is. There does seem to be a little bit of delay, especially when stopping. Starting from standstill, I feel more of the torque sensing, but then once you're going, it seems to rely a little bit more on cadence. I also felt a little bit of surge, kind of it was starting and stopping, and that might be because of the chain stretching or bouncing just a little bit, and then the torque sensor. I've experienced that with just TMM4 sensors, but this is the combined sensor that's unique to Juiced bikes. I feel like it does a better job. I thought it would be cool to show the battery, just taking it off, what that looks like. They've got these cool sort of routed keys. Just insert like that, even fold. It's kind of neat. And then twist, and it's got a little bit of a spring action in there, and then just pulls out like that. Ugh, this one's quite heavy. And it's got a couple fuses. That's pretty intense. And this is what I'm talking about, where it's like partially inset, so it steps down into the frame, and I think that gives it a little bit more toughness than the Bottle Boss mounted batteries out there, like some of the Shark Packs and stuff. They've got a plastic track. This thing, it's mounting to that purpose-built frame. Kind of clicks in, pull out the keys, maybe double check it, and we're ready to go. Hey guys.
All right, good.
I'm gonna take on the little creek thing. We're scouting it out. So yeah, Rich, if you come over here, tell us to go through right here and then try to come up this bank. So if you're here and you're kind of down like this,
okay.
Sound good? Let's do it. Oh yeah. Nice. Yeah, the key is to go really slow if you don't want to get super dirty, but I mean, there's the tire print. The soft tires, they did really well. I didn't slide out. I came up that bank afterwards, and the throttle was right there when I needed it. Worked out pretty well. And then you can see the fenders kept the frame mostly clean. You got a little bit of mud down there and stuff, but my body, I didn't have to pedal to do that. I could just use the throttle. So I think I'm pretty clean. Did I get dirty, Rich?
No, you did not get dirty.
Stayed clean.
You look pretty good.
Thanks for your help on that.
Not a problem.
The tire pressure range is 5 to 30 PSI, and I feel like they might have had these overinflated. They were pretty firm, but that's good because Rich is a bigger guy. I'm smaller, and we're getting ready to do some off-road and a little bit of mud, so I'm really lowering that like all the way down, almost to 5. Quite a bit of air in there. From here you should be able to see the suspension and just enjoy the ride. Keep an eye out for how water is protected with those fenders, and how the bike handles in the mud. where that walk assist is going to come in handy. Well, guys, I think that's about it. Had some fun. That is the Juiced Bikes RipCurrent S. It's their high-speed fat bike. People have been asking about this for a while. I hope that the video gives you some feedback, but also all the details on the site. And I welcome your direct feedback if you've owned this, if you've actually purchased it, and you have some more just details or feedback to share. I really feel like Tora's done a great job listening and refining his products and just really scrutinizing the details. So anyway, for the full written review, ElectricBikeReview.com. Have fun out there, be respectful, and ride safe. Hey guys, we're back at the cars. I thought this would be really cool to show you. Rich is actually zip tying the front wheel down. It's got one of these really heavy duty 2-inch hitch racks from Thule. It's got the bigger cups for a fat bike, which is really nice. And then, you know, we've used the standard strap in the rear, and then he's actually putting that over the frame instead of the tire because, you know, these plastic fenders, you don't want to mess those up and you know, they can get loose or bent and stuff over time. So I think you've done a really good job. And the most important thing, what did we do before we lifted it up?
Oh, we bent with our legs.
We took the battery off. Rich,
Yes.
Come on, man. We took off like 7 whatever pounds. And that's always a good idea. These racks are usually rated for like at least 100 pounds. This one might be even higher. I don't know the model number.
It's 160.
160,
Yeah.
baby. Well, I don't want to turn this into a Thule commercial, but I just thought it would be kind of cool because it's like, how do you move these things around? And, you know, Rich travels all around. He carries the bikes with him. It actually cleaned off pretty well. And they actually have a whole line of accessories, and I didn't want to miss out on this. So really cool Abus helmet, and it's got like the bug protector mesh in the front, some reflectors on the rear, and then an integrated light. Definitely appreciate it. Do you just push the middle, Rich?
Yes.
Oh, look at that. Okay, look at this. Nice. So it's very similar to the rear lights that you guys do on the bikes. I was talking about comfort and suspension seat posts, and these guys stock the body floats now that's called Connect. It's gonna fit on there. They have different springs, and then there's that adjuster at the back so you can tighten it down. And I lowered the seat as far as it would go on the RipCurrent, and you can see where it does collide a little bit with the rack, but I mean, we're only talking like an inch more that it would be able to go down. So I think that's a good setup. And right now they only have the step, or the high step. They don't have a step through, and I think that's probably a good decision given the amount of weight that's on this. You won't get as much frame flex. Over here on the standard Crosscurrent S, you know, if I loosen this seat and put it all the way down, the rack is just, it's in a slightly different place. You see how it's like just arranged differently. This one's also tipped forward a little bit. There is some adjustment, and I think we could flatten it out. I don't know, I appreciate that there's some adjustments. When you have a bolt-on rack like this, so you want to keep an eye on those bolts and maybe use some Loctite so that over time, if you're on bumpy terrain, the rack doesn't start to come loose. And then one final accessory here. This is the Abus Bordeaux. It's another thing that they stock, and you know, it looks like that would fit pretty well there, even with the battery on, just because it is so narrow. You can check it out on that frame. Yeah, this is good stuff. I really appreciate your help again, Rich.
Yeah.